He got some tours. That's great. It's like trying Who's mayor now? Well, that's if it's over after. So you still mayor?
So good morning. My name is Holly Herrera, and I'm the board administrator for today's board meeting, June 6, 2024. If you are logged into Teams in person, please mute your laptops to prevent feedback and echo. This meeting is being recorded, and Madam Chair Stevens, we are ready to begin.
Hey, I'll call this meeting to order. For guests in the room, please make sure that you sign in the sheet over at the table there. And if you'd like to make public comment during our public comment section, we limit public comments to 2 minutes per speaker. Please sign up for that. And then if you're online, public comment will also be listed for that as well. Now back to Holly for a roll call.
Thank you, Chair Stevens. And Catherine Stevens.
Present.
Steve Nagy.
Here.
Bill Brock.
Here.
Jim Knight.
Here.
And then there's excused absences for the record from Sarah Lucas and Jeff Pritchard. Is that excuse?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then ODAV staff in the room, please introduce yourself and just by your name and department, so the room knows who we are.
Okay. Tony Beach, airports.
Thank you.
Abby Abrahamson, I'm planning division program policy coordinator.
Thomas, planning and programs manager.
Brandon Pike in the planning division, and I'm the aviation planner.
Thank you. Okay, and roll call is complete.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Okay, first up, we have on the consent agenda today, the approval of the April 4th, 2024 board meeting minutes and the approval of the May 2nd, 2024 work session minutes. And I think, yes, so we'll take that as a consent agenda first, if I could have a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the consent agenda is approved. And then next we'll go into the notice of proposed rulemaking track changes. And let's see, we need a motion for the board to approve the prior board meeting minutes and work session. Oh, wait.
No, that's consent agenda.
Oh, wait, that's the consent agenda. We already did that. Okay. Said it twice. Okay, so then we're on to the public comment section. Do we have anybody in the room signed up for public comment or on the Teams meeting?
Okay, so written comments, they'll be acknowledged for the record, and we will be observing and acknowledging public comment, but we will not be responding to public comment right away in this meeting. I will start us off with written email comment we received. So we have received written public comment from Melissa Pendergrass with the Hillsborough School District with information on applications for the high school aerospace program. They are accepting applications through June 18th for a career and technical education aviation science instructor. This information was shared with the board members, and for future information on this announcement, please email the Oregon Department of Aviation. Thank you. And that's all for written public comment. Is there any elected officials who would like to make public comment online or in the room? I'll wait first. Okay, and then in-person sign-ins, I did not see anybody sign in. Online comments, please raise your hand or use the chat function. We do have 16 people in there. See anything? Okay, and public comment is closed.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Okay, so that brings us to the Welcome to Pendleton, and we are Honored to be joined by City Manager Rob Corbett, who would like to say a few words to us. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. My name is Rob Corbett. I'm the city manager for the city of Pendleton. When I started my career as a city manager in Burns, Oregon, where we have an airport there. And I remember, I wish I remembered the name of the director of the Oregon Department of Aviation at that time. I got to know her well because of some projects that we were doing. She helped me out with FAA funding. This kind of the first big project I had was a reconstruction of the main runway there at Burns. And I remember when she left, she took a job and she told me, she kind of whispered in my ear that flying cars were coming. And I thought she was crazy. And then fast forward 20 years, I'm in Pendleton, Oregon, and literally flying cars are coming. When I first came here, the airport, there was significant debt here at the airport. It literally looked like a third world country. There's comedy night every Tuesday where you can get cheap chicken wings and go out and listen to comedy at the casino. And they were joking about the weeds growing up in the runways here at Eastern Oregon Regional Airport. And obviously we've come a long way. When Steve Crispin was hired by the city to do economic development, we really had two directions to go in. One was tourism. We're the home of the world famous Pendleton Roundup, the world famous Pendleton Woolen Mills, and now the world famous Pendleton Whiskey. There's a huge, there's a lot of infrastructure here to throw a party, which we've been doing for over 100 years, the second full week in September. And so there was an opportunity in tourism, but we were also the largest landowner of industrial property in the city of Pendleton when we acquired this military installation home of the Doolittle Raiders. It had its heyday and it had obviously declined. And so when I hired Steve, I think much to his chagrin, I think he would have rather gone off into tourism, but we really focused on the industrial park and making this an economic engine. And then that, fortunately coincided with the creation of the test ranges around the country. And I remember early on Steve commenting that a vast nothingness with tumbleweeds blowing across the wheat fields who would have known that would have been an asset? Because this is exactly the kind of environment where a test range might succeed. And obviously the rest is history. If you haven't been to Pendleton, know that because of the Roundup and the parties we've been throwing for 100 years, we have amazing restaurants. We have super unique shops. There's a lot of craftsmen downtown, boot makers, hat makers, belt makers. And we literally try to put on a party every weekend so that people will come and experience Pendleton often for the first time, because what they do is they drive through on the freeway, they look down, they see the town, but they're on their way somewhere and they stop infrequently. And now, more fortunately for us, more and more, they're choosing to stop here, and that the economic benefit of what has been created here by Steve and his crew is immensely valuable to this community, and our goal is that it will be sustained for perpetuity. And so thank you for coming. Thank you for what you do to volunteer for the state of Oregon and in aviation. It's so important that volunteers like you do the work that you do. And again, enjoy your time here. This is a wonderful town. I hope you get to experience it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. It must have been Ann Crook. Was it Ann Crook?
It was. Yes, thank you. Yeah, she was very helpful to me, a young city manager. Didn't know anything about the FAA or state aviation and the grants that we as small airports qualified for. And we were able to do some really cool things because of her help.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thanks for welcoming us here today. And
Yeah, thank you.
thanks for hosting us as well. I think up next, I believe we have let's see, I'm not going to get the name right again.
Yeah, Steve Crispin, Economic Development Director for the city. Rob did a very good job on that welcome, so I won't take too much of your time. I think Jeff's running a little late. We're very excited to have just launched. We got a big grant from Business Oregon. We got the second most largest award in the state, $2.25 million to launch the Oregon UAS Accelerator, which is a drone startup accelerator. We have 7 startups that are our first cohort that literally arrived today. So I think we're going on a tour later today. We'll get to see some of those folks studying and or going through orientation. Just to add, Rob did a great job. Just to add to what's going on here there. He's right. I would have rather gone into tourism. I was the airport manager for 8 years before over the airport. But because there are a few harder problems to solve than the rural airport dilemma of how to make them self-sustaining, and viable, business entities and economic drivers in the community. And that's kind of been our mission. It was a huge asset at 2,300 acres here. 3 runways at the time, lots of, and if you had to rebuild it today's dollars, it would be an incredible amount of money. And yet it had lost its purpose in life. You can only do so much with the history. It's super cool, but it isn't a way to keep an airport this size self-sustaining. We realized the tower that's subsidized by the government, air service that's subsidized by the government, runways and taxiways it was just a matter of time with 14 to 18 ops a day that was going to come to an end. So the drone was where we chose to go. If you remember in 2013, a drone was almost a dirty word. We've now, so whiskey, wool, and rodeo is what Pendleton's famous for. We've now added drones to that mix. As far as we're aware, we get our intel usually from our competitor states around the country. Little Pendleton is the busiest test range in the United States. We just passed 50,000 ops last month. And so Eric joined us from the Army National Guard, where he oversaw the top drone unit in the nation for Army National Guard. We just happen to have an Army National Guard unit here with the drone unit. A lot of good timing for Oregon that all this came together as it did. But we now have companies. We have 3 multi-billion-dollar companies on the north side of a runway that no one ever flew on. So amazing stuff going on. We have a couple dozen different customers that come in. We've employed 50 to 150 full-time drone jobs here for the last 6 or 7 years at least. That fluctuates a little. This is new technology. It's a little bit of fits and starts, but I think and I know your director is very pro UAS, very bullish on UAS. I'm 100% in his court. Obviously, we've spent, the city alone, we've invested over $20 million in building out the test range that you're going to get to go see. And these startups are just another avenue to bring in more technology. This is like a place that all new technology that's going to be commercialized has to come. Once it's commercialized, it rolls out across the planet. But we have a really good thing going in the state of Oregon. And if for those of you that are on the UAS bandwagon, thank you for your support. For those that aren't, I would encourage you again. Hopefully, we're going to excite you later today. But so I don't know if Joseph's going to make it on every time for this thing. But
Okay.
again,
Yeah. Right.
welcome and thank you so much.
Thank
And if he does come in late, we could still squeeze him in maybe again.
That'd be great. He's an amazing human being that's also an Oregonian from Portland who's done a reverse Beverly Hillbillies and moved to Pendleton.
It's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, well then we will move on to staff reports. And so next up is the director's update. And Kenzie, we're so glad you could join us remotely today, and hopefully you are feeling okay and to be able to talk with us.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Stevens. Before I get started, I want to just say one thing. Holly Herrera is moving on, and this is her last board meeting. So I want to say thank you so much, Holly, for everything that you've done. You've done an excellent job, and we wish you the best in your upcoming adventures in Nevada. And I think on behalf of the entire agency, you've done a great job, and thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Holly.
And then the other thing I want to say was Steve Chrisman, Steve C. I really want to make it out there because Pendleton is truly one of my favorite spots. This has drones and it has tourism because folks didn't know I'm a former Oregon tourism commissioner. And I remember during one of our commission meetings, we went to the roundup, and I got to sit in the front row, and of course the bulls were kicking all stuff, and it was a great thing. And I ended up with some of that dirt from the infield in my mouth, so I just remember that. But it's truly a gem of Eastern Oregon. So I'm really jealous that all of you were able to make it out. So, but I will get into my presentation and I'll sort of explain why I'm not out there. So hold on. I share screen, broadcast. Here we go. Oh, come on, there we go. And then is my presentation up?
Nope. Oh, yeah.
Nope.
Now it is. Yes.
It is? Okay,
It's good now.
thank you. So, my apologies. So this is a picture of, well, my family and I went mountain biking in Sisters, Oregon last week. And this is the depiction of my son, who's 11 years old, successfully traversing a log. In my infinite wisdom, I'm like, hey, my son can do it, so can I. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. And my bike fell off and I fell onto a log and ended up breaking what I thought was 2 ribs, but ended up being 5. I went in for a follow-up yesterday in the x-rays. And so that's why I'm not in Pendleton to join you all. I wish I was, but that's what happened. So to give you an update, moving on. The first thing I want to talk to you about is a fantastic community outreach day we had at Oak Ridge, and it involved the Lane Community College and ODAV as well. And here's an overview of the picture that's on the apron. It's a decent number of people. And next, here's a really neat picture. So that's the mayor of Oak Ridge wearing FPV goggles. That's Solomon Singer holding an FPV drone. You have a number of students in back, as well as press. You also have representatives from West Fir and a West Fir council member as well, and other folks from the city of Oak Ridge as well. It was a fantastic day. It was a beautiful day. And Solomon was showing off a number of drones and really showing what drone technology is all about to the community. There's a huge number of students there. He brought pretty much his entire class, and you can see they're watching as Solomon gives his safety briefing, and it was really exciting because there's so many, the students were really stoked. Oh, that's a repeat. And what was really neat was seeing the woman involved in his class as well. This is just 2 of them, and they were out there flying drones, helping out and all that. So anything that we can do to support women in drones, I'm excited, and it was great to see. And then of course there's Alex and Don. So the ODAP folks, they're overseeing, they're just being themselves. So that was good to have them out there as well. And then next up, continuing that whole education theme, I had the opportunity to go to the Hillsborough Air Show. And if you take a look, I shot these photos, by the way, so I didn't take them from anywhere, but these are some of the photos that I was able to take. We had a group get together, members from CTEC, OACE, Lane Community College, Portland Community College, Oregon Education Department, and us. We had a quick meeting there to really start talking about what we can do in planning for a bigger event in 2025. And our plan is to spin up a larger working group in June to really start planning for the event in 2025 that will hopefully get a lot of educators as well as students to the Hillsborough Air Show for a big sort of symposium. It aligns with what we've been talking about, and I think we can pull it off for next year. So as an update for the strategic plan, the RFP has been awarded. Now we're just going through the contracting process. And Kristen might be able to give you an update on that, but that's where we are at. So one thing that we were able to do this past week with my broken ribs, they were very sympathetic. We made a presentation to the Joint Committee on Transportation. I was able to present with Jeff Pritchard. He addressed the public safety usage drones, and I gave an overview of what we were doing with drones and what was also going on in the United States, in other states, in regard to use. I was able to give them a brief update on how we stood in comparison to other states. We ran out of time. They were asking questions that we weren't able to get through all our presentations. There was so much interest there. The chair said, "Hey, why don't you come back in the fall and give us a longer debrief?" I think that's a good idea. So there's a lot of interest in the legislature, and I think we have some definitely really interesting opportunities coming up in 2025. One thing I also want to note was I had the opportunity to head out to Newport with Alex, and we observed a large joint exercise in earthquake response at the Newport Airport. And that is a drone that our own board member, Jeff Pritchard, was flying. And I don't know if this video will play, so let me know if it does or doesn't, or if it's too choppy, let me know. So let's see. So what you have here is an Alta X, and he's simulating a drop of supplies in case of an earthquake.
We don't see it yet.
I think it's just delayed.
Is it
It's
choppy?
Yeah,
Is
but
it
it's
delayed?
fine.
A little bit.
We can see it.
We can see it.
Yeah, fine. Videos are also posted on our Instagram.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
ORA.
But what's really neat is Jeff is a fantastic pilot. And what folks don't understand is when you have a payload underneath the drone at that distance away from the drone, it swings back and forth and it causes the drone to freak out. So I know he was very nervous because he told me, "Hey, this isn't even my drone." So that was kind of fun. So we also had the opportunity to head to the AUVSI Cascades Conference Spring Symposium, and that was in Hood River. And for those who don't know, AUVSI is the Association for Uncrewed Vehicle Systems International. They are big into drones as well as advanced air mobility. The conference, part of the conference was emceed by our own, of course, Jeff Pritchard, and Richard from Washington was in attendance as well. So both her and I made a joint presentation on how both our states work together. And then Kevin Tucker from the Tillamook Test Range was out there. Stephen Willoughby, who is the Deputy Director with the Department of Homeland Security Counter UAS program, was out there as well. Justin Pierce from In Situ. Gur Kimchi from Data Blanket. Gur actually used to work for Amazon Prime Air as well. And then the Washington Department of Commerce made a presentation as well. Business Oregon made an appearance, and there were a lot of other folks there as well. So we had the opportunity to talk with a lot of them, just talk about what opportunities there are in the state. There are a lot of private businesses, and especially coming from the Gorge and also from Washington. And we had some great conversations and talked about what they were doing. So we learned a lot, and yeah, it was a great opportunity to chat with people. So the other interesting thing was there was a data by Data Blanket, and that Gur Kimchi is part of that company. I'm not going to show this video. You can probably see it on Instagram, but they showed off how their drones were, with them, they were able to use autonomous drone swarms with AI to detect fires. That was really interesting demonstration to see. And we talked to them about potentially, hey, would you be interested in showing off a demo at Oak Ridge? So those conversations are ongoing as well. And of course, at the event, Brian Prang took a selfie while I looked like a complete nerd with my goggles on while I was flying FPV. Is Brian there?
Yes, he just got here.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Well, hey, Brian. Well, which by the way, congrats on becoming the newest board member.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was officially his term doesn't start until July, but he made it through the gauntlet with the Senate. So he's a Senate confirmed board member. If you don't know, Brian is the vice president of Hood Aero and is a former FAA test site general manager for Aquasi. He's a graduate of North Dakota with a BS in commercial aerospace. He's a CFI and holds a private pilot license and also a remote pilot certificate. He worked for Evergreen Aviation flying the in-situ Scan Eagle with over 1,200 hours and 5 tours with operations in the Arctic, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He has over 2,250 hours of fixed-wing aircraft flight time as well. So Brian has a tremendous amount of experience, and I'm really happy to have him on the board. So again, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rockstar. And he has some really cool plans as well. And you need to check out his Instagram page. Brian will let you know what his it's Hack Arrow, right? Yeah. Really neat stuff. He has some neat videos of drones following one of his cubs, and it's fantastic. So all the rest, in terms of the Oak Ridge funding, EDA is in process. Connect Oregon is in process. So I just want to let you know about that. In terms of advanced air mobility, Oregon and the state of Washington is hosting a advanced air mobility multi-state collaborative meeting in the Dalles, July 15th through 16th. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. One thing that didn't make it in there because it's sort of late breaking is ODAV will be applying for a 2024 SMART grant. We were unsuccessful last time, but I think we have a really, really good concept of operations that we will move forward with. And the idea is to create sort of a beyond visual line of sight corridor between PDX and Pendleton. So along the gorge, there's a lot of opportunities, especially with cargo delivery and wildfire research as well. So stay tuned. We'll keep you updated. And that's about it. Any questions?
All right. Thanks, Kenji. Great presentation. I especially like the stick figure accident.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Very good. And we wish for you really fast healing. I know the broken rib thing is really painful. Fast healing to you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Kenji?
Kenji, Steve, when you get the agenda for that advanced air mobility meeting, what is that, July, I believe you said?
Yes.
The multi-state, can you send
Yes.
that to all of us as well?
Yes. Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Definitely. Okay, if there's no other questions for Kenji, then we will move on to the,
Sorry to interrupt. So Joseph Wino is now here.
okay, do you have a,
So yes, I have his slides if you'd like to.
okay, very good. Yes, hi, Joseph.
Hi, Joseph.
It's an honor to be able to speak with you today. I'm Joseph Plano. I'm the executive director of the Oregon UAS Accelerator. And we are working on CRISPR digital twinning technology, so I can be in 2 places at one time. Just kidding. We have our orientation for 7 cohort members that we've selected. We're super pleased that they're here in Oregon. So we will become the preeminent hub for unmanned aerial and robotic systems. I'd like to introduce you to Percy the Pegasus. She is our mascot, and she is just as nimble on the ground as she is in the sky. And You can see her back leg. That's our nod to the electrification of the industry. Okay, there we go. Of course, I'll give you a little background on myself. I'm most recently from Hell's Kitchen, New York, of all places. But I ran arguably the most successful nonprofit accelerator in the country out of Newport Beach, California for 6 years. We helped about 1,500 industry agnostic startups ranging from deep tech to med device, med tech to clean tech and climate tech. I would say in 2022 alone, our startups went on to raise about 1.6 billion in capital, creating 5,000 high-paying jobs for their communities. And that's what's really exciting about, the opportunity to lead that organization. And, as much as I'm happy about the startups that are successful in their businesses, it's really about how they'll impact their communities by creating manufacturing and supply chain jobs. So I wouldn't be standing here today if it were not for the very generous $2.25 million grant that we received through Business Oregon and Oregon Lottery dollars. We're considered one of 5 centers of innovation excellence in the state of Oregon, the only center of innovation excellence that focuses on unmanned, the advancement of unmanned systems. I believe there's only maybe one other accelerator in the country, perhaps. I'm not sure, Steve. Maybe not. We're super proud to be designated as a center of innovation excellence. So really our accelerator is built on 4 core centers of excellence. Many of our innovators come from science, aviation, STEM, engineering backgrounds, but that doesn't necessarily mean they understand how to run a business and how to gain funding in their business. So our core center of excellence, or one of them, is we're going to teach them over a 12-week period how to become business and investor ready. So they can go out and make a cogent pitch to an agnostic investor, and that investor will immediately understand what the value proposition is and what the ask is. All startups, regardless of their sector, find it very difficult to raise seed funding for their businesses. So how do you gain funding and allow you to advance your business to a point where you're now attractive to investors? Well, one way you can do that is by securing government grants. And if you're able to secure a government grant, that'll extend your runway so you can do more research and development and collect data. So now you can share that data with an investor, and now they understand that not only is the value proposition strong, but now you have data to back that up. And so that's technical readiness. We have a technical mentor in residence here on site, and he has assembled a technical mentor pool that our startups will have access to help them with some of the technical challenges that they have on the test range. And of course, leveraging the tremendous assets of the test range. There is no other test range in the country like we have here. I think we have over 50,000 test flights now on our range. I know you mentioned single operator, multiple drones in the air, or what we call swarming. I don't like to use that term, but swarming. We have certification to swarm on our test range, and our first swarming took place yesterday. Yeah, so we're super excited about. Not to mention, 14,000 square miles. Not to mention numerous microclimates that our innovators can experience here on the test range. So what is the market opportunity for us as an accelerator? You look at this, you see a really healthy hockey stick of growth in the industry. The US market currently it's about 18 billion, but they expect that to increase to about 72 billion by 2033. And what's significant is the CAGR, or the compounded annual growth rate, is about 14.87%, which is super healthy, in my opinion. What you notice now is that most of the market is military UAS, which dominates about 62% of the marketplace. Non-military accounts for about 37.2% of the share over the next decade, but we start to see this shift a little bit when we start to see non-military applications of unmanned systems in agriculture, construction, emergency services, and so on. We have some very interesting startups that are here with us for 12 weeks. We have an Oregon-based startup called Range Air, they are addressing, all of us know how we've been impacted by wildfires of recently. They have this very innovative payload that they have over a very specialized drone that can hover over wildfire areas. And what it does is when emergency services or firefighters are embedded in those areas, they communicate generally using radios. Sometimes those radios aren't that effective if they're behind a mountain, so on and so forth. Well, this drone has a special payload that beams down a cone of high-speed Wi-Fi to people on the ground that are fighting these fires. And now they have the ability to communicate very quickly with one another. And it could be the difference between life and death. Super excited about that. Global non-military spending of UAS production. We're experiencing not as robust as the military market, but a 9.1% compound annual growth rate. 2022, they estimated the market to be $7.2 billion. By 2031, they estimate the market to be close to $20 billion. And again, increasing demand across various industries from manned and uncrewed systems. Yeah, we are Oregon UAS. We're accelerating the future of unmanned systems. We have 7 startups that are coming to us from all across the country. And we were asked, well, of the 7, why are only 2 of your startups from Oregon? And that's a really great question. But our philosophy is that, at one point we all lived in darkness in caves until someone brought fire. And when they brought this fire, it illuminated the cave and it changed life for everybody. And that's our hope, is that these companies that come here from outside of the state will illuminate our cave and will plant their flag in Pendleton, knowing how valuable the test range is. And that will impact not only our business, but the city of Pendleton and the state of Oregon. And again, just to go over our objectives, our accelerators here to accelerate the development and commercialization of unmanned systems, both in the air and on the ground. Unlike many accelerators, like the one I was previously at, that was very successful, but the only thing we provided was great advice. Right? We'll teach it. We'll give you a roadmap on how to do it, but it's really your responsibility to go out and do it. What differentiates us is that we actually provide significant non-dilutive grant money to our startups. So each of the 7, I don't know, it could be on the other slide. Yeah. So each of our startups receive a $40,000 non-dilutive grant. And they have, if you look at the value of the in-kind services that they get on the range, everything in total for each of our startups are more than $140,000 in funding and in-kind services. And the dedicated intern support. So we work with Eastern Oregon Workforce Board to get a paid intern embedded with the startups. They come from our local universities and colleges and high schools. In addition to that, we work very closely with the tribe here And the tribe works very closely with an organization called Del Mar Aerospace that certifies drone pilots. So each of our startups will have a certified drone pilot intern that knows the range and knows the capabilities to give them a little extra boost for those that don't know what to expect on our range. This all culminates in the Pendleton Investor Roundup, which is super exciting. It's the first time we're doing this, but there isn't a better time to do this because it runs concurrent to the world famous Pendleton Roundup. And so we'll have an event on September 10th. It'll be hosted at the Slick Fork Saloon at Hanley's. And we expect to have about 100 to 150 people, many of them investors and strategics. And we'll feature the 7 startups who have gone through and now preparing to make that pitch on the stage. And then many of our investors and strategics will adjourn to the roundup where they'll experience the extreme bull riding event, which if you haven't seen that, it's pretty exciting. Yeah. And so why are we important to government agencies? The opportunities here are to keep pace with technological advancement. We're bringing in kind of leading edge startups to our accelerator. So if you understand the startups that are coming into our accelerator, you would understand what's trending in the UAV marketplace. And it's this public-private collaboration that we're trying to foster here, and balancing innovation and public safety is always a critical factor. And it's a platform for evaluating public service applications as well. Practical applications are exploring them, industry collaboration, and knowledge sharing, and of course, talent development. We have a very talented pool of individuals here that are, we have access to skilled professionals for government initiatives. Should you need someone that has the skill, this is really the place to come. I want to thank you very much. I know it kind of took over a little bit of time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
And if you have any questions at all, or if you're ever visiting here, please come and visit me. I would love to be able to show you around and answer any questions that you might have. Sure.
It was an intriguing portion of your presentation regarding presentations to investors.
Yeah.
What are the key points that you would explain to a potential investor and why should they invest in? What is it? I was an investor. Well, how do I make money on this?
Yeah, and that's a really good point because investors, bottom line is return on investment within a very short period of time. Generally, they don't want to invest their money for any longer than 3 years without seeing some type of return on investment. But investors, and this is part of the program that I really didn't get to, but we've developed a predictive analytics scorecard. And so that scorecard is based on 40 points that we know are critically important for a startup to answer, whether you're an angel investor, family office fund, a high net worth individual, or a venture capitalist. We know the 40 points that they're interested in having a startup answer. And those things could be the strength of your team, your customer market fit, your team dynamics, your market opportunity, your financial assumptions. All of these matter. And we actually score the startups based on their presentation on these 40 points. We have a database of about 1,500 companies that have already been scored, that are both funded and unfunded across each of these 40 points. We've established a mean across each of these 40 points. So when we overlay the score of the startup on top of the funded mean, we're immediately able to see where those deficiencies lie across each of those 40 points. And it gives us a roadmap to go back and say, okay, we know where your deficiencies are. If we can bring those up to the funded mean or higher, you now have a much greater chance of gaining funding. And that's really the key to how we've been successful in California. We hope to bring that to Oregon as well.
So is there a certain portion, of the industry that interests investors more than others? Is it manufacturing of drone equipment or?
Yeah, so I think as much as we would like to differentiate ourselves and say that our niche is UAS, UAV, the greater umbrella in which we sit is really tech. And so they're a tech investor generally that are interested in this, but I think, aerospace and defense investors are really where, really the market or the investors that are looking at this space to invest in their startups. Any other questions?
Kenji, that has.
Yeah, hey, Kenji.
Hey,
How are you?
great presentation. Good. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Good. That was just a fantastic presentation. And I just want to tell the board that what Joe's doing here is one of the most critical elements in especially fostering a drone economy. And I'll tell you why. You go to a general accelerator, they don't have the domain expertise in the UAS sector. And you really need that, right? So you think about companies, you think about the companies are different depending on which sector they're in. Having that specific knowledge of not only how drones work, but what's upcoming, but also knowing which VCs, which funders are actually familiar with UAS technology just makes that pitch that much easier for a lot of these small companies. And the services that they're providing in terms of whether it be logistical support, whether it be business formation, whether it be every single thing, having been through a number of startups, this is absolutely critical. It helps them sort of launch these companies. Now, what the question that I also have is whether, Joe, this is for you. Are these mostly seed round companies, or are you taking companies up to Series A, or even just companies that are unfunded?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, Kenji. We have to make the differentiation that we're not an incubator. So we're not assisting startups that are what we call back of the napkin ideation incubation stage. And so the startups, we're an accelerator. So we're generally helping startups that have funds raised to date, whether that's dilutive funds or non-dilutive, either through grants or maybe a small friends and family round. And they have, and they're TRL level 5 or higher. And so they have something that they can actually go out and utilize on a test range. Because again, we would not be here if the test range weren't here. So if you're here as a startup, you got to have something to go out and test on the range. So that's a critical requirement that we have for our startups. I hope that answered your question, Ken.
Yeah, it does. And one other thing that I also want to mention is it's also having knowledge of what companies are in the area as well, because there's a robust UAS ecosystem. You take a look at the Gorge, you take a look at Hood River, White Salmon, you look at the Pacific Northwest in general. There's a very, very robust system where you can start plugging these and connecting these startups in as well to these companies. So there's a lot of partnerships that can be developed. So this is awesome. Great job.
Yeah,
love it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because our technical mentor in residence, Dan Fuller, is a former in situ executive, and he lives in the Gorge. So our technical mentor pool that is about 16 individuals at this point are primarily all from that Gorge area that you mentioned. And they are experts in everything from composites to combustion propulsion, to all of the areas that our startups, or what we feel our startups will have questions about and challenges in. And to have this technical mentor in residence in this pool, again, is a critical cog in what we do with this accelerator.
Yeah. Now, one last question for are most of the companies that are coming in, are they mostly hardware, or there's some more software components too?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So interestingly enough, I showed you that pie chart, and most of the global UAS market is military. But what we found interesting about the startups that applied were I would say of the seven, 4 are civilian or commercial use, and 3 are actually Department of Defense or defense focused. And so it's super interesting in that part. What was your question again? I'm sorry, can you?
Software or hardware?
Oh, software and hardware, yeah. So in terms of software and hardware, probably evenly divided as well. We have a super interesting team from MIT that are here, 3 individuals from MIT. And you'll be super interested in this, Kenji, as well. As you know, when you fly a drone in the air, you have a mission control that communicates information or data to the drone through generally radio frequency. Well, they have figured out a way to communicate with their drones using optical lasers. So those lasers can transmit data between mission control and the drone. And what's significant about that is it cannot be blocked or jammed. And so from a military
Defense application.
defense application. So the other interesting part about this is they've already been in communication with the Ukrainian government about this technology. And it doesn't hurt when one of the founders' dad is the general that oversees the 412 test wing at Edwards Air Force Base. So a good inside connection there as well. But yeah, again, we have another company out of Fenton, Missouri called Cypher Technologies. Super excited to have them there. They have figured out a way to communicate with drones using voice command. So they can control their drones using voice commands as opposed to figuring out how to, use your frequency communications. So very interesting technology. As yeah, if you want to learn more about it, please, as I said, you're all very welcome at any time. Come and visit, and I'll be more than happy to take you over to our flex hangar where all our innovators are located, and you can see them actually working on their innovation. It's quite inspiring. Yeah.
I have a couple questions for you. So can you define diluted and non-diluted grant?
So dilutive funding generally means that in exchange for funding, an investor is looking for some equity in the business. So, that's 4% equity, 6% equity. So that's diluted. Non-dilutive is government grant money generally, and that means that they don't take any dilution, or they don't dilute your company at all. But there are requirements with grant funding. So for example, if you receive grant money, you can't apply that to securing patents in your business. So there are certain restrictions of grant money, but it allows you to do research and development and collect additional data. So that's the biggest difference. Yeah.
And I know this accelerator is focused on UAS. Do you see potential in the future for eVTOL and this kind of accelerator setup?
Like I said, Percy's back leg is an electric lightning bolt. And so we see myriad of applications with eVTOL and how that'll impact the industry. Not only from an environmental standpoint, but just numerous impacts that'll have.
Can I answer out for you a little bit? So quite a bit of our testing out here, while it's done on a UAS, it's not for UAS application.
Okay.
So it's a cheaper way to test things on aircraft and see if they work than it is to build a fully manned aircraft and test those things. And then they scale up from there. We have University of Victoria, Canada is actually over there right now, and they're testing a small scale. But ultimately, they're trying to create a greener jet, commuter jet, and that's where they're headed. But they're starting with UAS until they get the manned version.
Great. Very cool.
And I'm sure you're going to take a tour after this, but when you walk into that hangar, like the first time I walked in that hangar, there's nothing more inspiring than to be walking on the same ground as Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle and his 80 patriotic raiders once walked. And you see that giant American flag,
And you just get this sense of like, wow, this is really something special and on D-Day, no less, right?
Yes, right,
You're
exactly.
here on D-Day,
Yep.
so welcome.
Okay.
So in addition to the hardware or, the hard infrastructure of the range,
Okay.
who or what drove the ideas for including the idea of the accelerator was it the city? Was it, where did that,
That's a Steve Chrisman.
where did that come from? Because you're obviously adding now an incredible value and benefit, not just because you have 14,000 square miles of range, but you now have support for that. So where did that impetus come from?
I grew up on the Jersey Shores. I like what we're doing, running the horse race track. We had a group of lanes for breeders to come in and run their technology. In fact, Brian's doing one of our breeders at the time, running with technology. And we provided them stables and sold a little hay. We needed to take it to the next level. So we weren't really getting Eric and the rest of our team with 3 full-time US employees, which is unusual for most rural municipalities. Weren't getting like knee deep into what they were doing, and it was obvious there was help needed with some companies to kind of take it to the next level. So the accelerator opportunity was brought to our attention, and we went, hey, that's a chance to bring in someone like Joseph, who could then bring in a team of not just this isn't just technical problems. A lot of them, sometimes they're brilliant technically, but don't have a business acumen. And so we wanted to try to take the test range concept and elevate it to give them the help they needed to really get to market. Because this is a tough road to hoe. I mean, we don't kid anyone. There's going to be, we've already seen a lot of failure. I wouldn't call it failure because a lot of brilliant people don't disappear and go in a cave. They go work for another company and then come back to us with the new company, with the new technology. So, but it's the more we can do to lessen, you need to test in a place like Pendleton, this fairly rural, fairly, light airface and ground cover. But then you immediately run into workforce and supply chain challenges. We wanted to close that gap, speed up the development process, limit barriers, and I think we're very excited. I mean, literally launching today, but we're super excited about what Joseph's working on. It was the right natural next step if Oregon really wanted to seize control of this unique economic development opportunity. It's once in a lifetime for us.
And so we have 2 cohorts right currently. So we have 7 that's starting now, and we'll have 7 more that will be arriving here probably in March. But my goal, I think, we have an opportunity to grow this to 14 startups a quarter. And so when you start getting to those numbers, you start to see that kind of ripple out and affect the community, creating manufacturing jobs, creating supply chain, service industry, so on. And that's ultimately the goal here, is again to impact the community in a really positive way. And Pendleton is a place where we honor our roots, but at the same time we embrace technology, and it's coming. And UAV is going to be here. It's going to be a part of our daily lives.
We get asked a lot, are you doing something that the Gord was already doing? And we are a complement to the Gord. In fact, we're big fans of the Gord and the supply chain and situ and companies like Brian's have built up. I mean, it is a remarkable asset that wasn't being as well marketed, I think, to the world as it could have been. And so we complement that with a great place to kind of do the flight test component. I think the sky's the horizon. I'm super excited for your support. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Great. Excellent presentation. Okay.
I gotta follow that up. I mean.
Right. Yes. So next up we have our planning manager update, and try to beat that, Alex.
That's exciting. I don't know. Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thomas, Planning and Programs Manager here at the Department of Aviation. And we're here today. So some of these slides will be kind of a little bit of a repeat. It's been a couple of meetings since I've done a presentation, just for scheduling issues and whatnot. So little later. So I'd like to introduce everybody on the team again. I think everybody here knows Andrea. Maybe the first time for a lot of you to meet Brandon Pike in person, our aviation planner. And then we have a fairly new individual, Army Bunkle. He's about 4 months in now, and he, along with Andrew and I, also work on the ASAP grant programs. And then we have transitioned doing our FAA grants and our contracts procurement in-house. And I'll get to that a little bit more as we move on. And okay, so this, since our last meeting, our last presentation several meetings ago, let's take a second to update. Sorry, I'll wait.
It's not like that.
So we have modified one of our positions to include our pavement maintenance, pavement installation program, which is Andrea here, and the share between Andrea and I, and that just gives us a better focus on being able to really do some revisions to our policies and procedures and rules as they are specific to PEP and PNP programs, and shares those duties between two individuals, Andrea and myself, instead of just one. And then our other position, the one that Ermi is currently in, had modified that previously just a grant position to our contract procurement administration. And again, our FAA grant applications as well. And just on the right there, you'll see how each of the positions is broken up in some other primary duties. Okay, so Connect Oregon. So at the next work session, early July, the Aviation Board, all of us here, will be getting together to actually review and score, test and rank the Connect Oregon application. So there is 15 aviation projects that were received by ODOT, which is apparently quite a few more than there have been previously in the past. There was fewer, roughly marine and rail this year, and quite a few more aviation. So this is my first cycle going through. I'll probably have the best historical reference, but all of the airports listed there are the flying airports. You'll notice we have a few of them that are our state airports, Milano and Oak Ridge. And there is some of the dates there. So this Andrea, Ermi, Lisa, and I back on April 18th reviewed and ranked all of these 15 applications. Applications were sent to everybody here on the board, May 7th. And then again, July 11th, we'll have a meeting where the board members review and rank those. And the final rankings are sent to ODOT next day, that Friday. Any questions on Connect Oregon at this point? Okay, so Andrea will get into the ASAP rules a little bit more later, but again, we have been, Andrea and I and now Army have been spending quite a bit of time on just an entire overhaul revision of all of our 738, 124, which is our ASAP rules. Been working with DOJ to really just provide some further clarification of all the rules. Again, there's some dates now to go off of. So we filed with Secretary of State May 6th, published in the bulletin June 3rd, and we have our hearing scheduled for June 19th. That was we did find out after we scheduled it that is Juneteenth, so it is a state recognized holiday. But Andrea and I, just so we don't change it, we will leave it as is. Check in for an hour or two, do our thing, and we do, find there's any issues, we can always have a second hearing if needed. And then the last day for public comment is June 21st at 5 o'clock. So welcome everybody here to join in on those hearings or provide a written comment prior. That is definitely appreciated. So core grants, our agreements, we've been partly due to a lot of the changes that are being made to our ASAP rules, which of course are not entirely finalized, but that has brought to our attention several areas in our core grant agreements that just need to be updated. Some of them, as you see here, are modifications to our insurance requirements, including doing a risk assessment so we can decide which insurance amounts are appropriate for projects. Some may be, 1 million, 2 million for 2 and 3 and so on. And at our next cycle that opens up in the fall, we will be providing an opportunity to applicants to provide a brief presentation to each of the ARCs wouldn't be probably to the board because, you know, it could potentially be 30, 40 plus applications and that would be, you know, a 2-day deal. So it would be in smaller groups to the ARC. So I've been on several of those. So it would be, you know, 5 or 6 different presentations or so in each ARC.
It's a great idea.
And it'd just be an opportunity. We, you know, wouldn't be a requirement, but if we said 2 or 3 minutes, you know, handful of slides, and we feel that one of the things that has came up multiple times during these application projects is there's always plenty more questions, you know, to ask the airport to clarify a few things. And a lot of times it just goes back on, I know staff have to reach out to the airport, but you know, the airport was already there and answer it on the spot. That would be great. And it also provides an opportunity for the ARC and ODAP staff to kind of give training on the fly, you know, if something could have been done better on the next application, they'll be aware of it.
So are the presentations before they submit their applications?
It would be after. So we would still have some trainings beforehand, like we had, you know, past. Yeah, that would, so it'd be during the. We have scheduled a couple of trainings. Fortunately, the attendance was not very high. I think the last one had 5 or 6 people show up.
And that's what, last fall, we tried to do it at Owama just because we'd hoped there would be a few more people there. So yeah, we're always trying to get that information out.
I guess this is a scheduling conflict issue. I know you guys set it for when you're available. I'm wondering if maybe you still hold it, but you record it and you can send it back out.
Sure.
Yeah, I think you probably could get more people
Posted on the website too.
watching it after the fact.
Sure. Yeah, okay.
But in general, I would say I really continue to be pleased that how much you guys have improved the streamlining of the core process. It's definitely a much easier process for airports to complete now. And also your collaborative approach, I think, has been really helpful.
For the presentations, it's after they've submitted their application. Was it before they've been scored or is it after they've been scored?
Before they've been scored. So during the ARC review before you get that scoring system, you know.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. Total Payment Evaluation Program, PEP. So this work is ongoing, you know, today across the state, Region 2, non-NIPIS, NIPIS. So list of airports there, it's all around the state. Region. Payment maintenance program, same thing, 2, you know, different regions, Region 3, 4. This work is ongoing. All of our agreements and whatnot have been signed. I think the only one we're waiting on at the moment is boardman, but everybody else is, we're moving forward with getting to work on the schedule for the summer. Land use and airspace, Brandon's side of the agency on the airspace analysis side, so aeronautical studies. Brandon's completed over 170 in progress studies, that includes cranes, housing, utility projects, several of which, you know, they do end up getting deemed hazardous to aviation. Land use, so again, Brandon has reviewed hundreds of land use applications and development permits from local and state jurisdictions. And then a new thing for our agency, Kenji's talked about it before, we're in the early stages of implementation and setting up our own internal use of GIS software. So that'll provide us a lot of opportunities for just, you know, having infrastructure, aviation infrastructure inventory, Part 77 service monitoring, and so on. So that's new to us. We're set up with the software, and now we just start getting hands-on and seeing what we can do with it.
You know, will you be able to provide that data out to airports as they complete their airport master plans? Because that's another component that the FAA is looking for now in a master planning process. So if that's something that can be shared, it'd be probably very helpful to especially small airports.
Especially small ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah, see why we could. Yeah, I mean, and you know, and again, it's early for us. We have ways to go before we probably get comfortable with how to use it and what data we'll have and won't have. So anybody has, you know, an aviation or GIS expert that we can tap into, that would be probably very
Happy to have some, yeah, why don't you come talk to our team? I know the vehicle help.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Pick you up on that. So contract administration and procurement. So this has been kind of occurring again, the past couple presentations, but again, we are in the transition process of bringing procurement from ODOT into ODOT. We did have to do an extension back in April just to ensure, Hermie and I had completed all of our training and certification and whatnot. We still are on schedule now for a July 1st, official transition date when procurement is in-house. Just so I guess everybody's aware here, both Hermie and I have completed, I think, well over 40 hours, required training for the state procurement requirements. And then I'll be doing July to get a basic certification, which isn't necessarily needed, but we just figure we may as well go above and beyond and check every box we can. And a little bit of overkill, but that doesn't hurt when it comes to procurement, just to really make sure we're doing everything as we should be.
That's great. And how do you anticipate that, how your work will change and how the ODAV's work will change and the effect for those reliant for services?
So, of course, everybody's short-staffed, and unfortunately, right now, sometimes when we do get contracts that need to be moved through the procurement process, there is a holdup of sometimes several weeks or even a month or longer. And so really, this would be a quicker turnaround time, ideally, on anything that's over $250,000, still goes to DOJ, we still do that process. Handling everything in-house saves us some revenue per biennium, but 158,000 plus there. And we would foresee, going to be a transition period for us, really kind of blooming our own processes and being consistent with it. But, from 6 or so months in, our turnaround times ideally would be several weeks, if not a month or so quicker than some of the turnaround times currently.
Great. Well, I'm very pleased to see you guys making that transition, and thank you. I know that's a big commitment to spend all of those hours learning about that, but it's great to have that enhancement, I guess, with the ODA.
So does ODOT simply hand over all existing or active contracts to you, or is there like a cutoff date that's starting at this point and moving forward, they become our obligation?
Yeah, so they do the initial procurement, and then once the procurement's completed and it goes into a contract administration phase, that's been going to us for years, quite a while. We would just be taking over the actual entire procurement process of that initial phase when it goes out to bid and advertise and all that stuff. And that, as of today, everything's, other than I think one ITB, everything has been transitioned over to us. So we are now, on the final month, we just have a few weeks left before that official date. So now we're just working with ODOT procurement staff to go through some of the, walk through some of the processes with them hands-on and organ buys and how to do different functions of the procurement process. Just again, to really verify that we get understanding, we're confident forward. And answer the question part.
And obviously, I'm asking a question way in the end of the process, but there's enough staff and time and available resources to handle this. That was part of the overall evaluation process, obviously.
Yeah, and earlier in the presentation with some of the, kind of modifying of some of the positions, we have a great team, and we've been able to automate a lot of our kind of day-to-day processes to really save a lot of time for especially Andrea and I on the ASAP grants side of things. And so that provided an opportunity to look at some additional duties. And the procurement it's primarily going to be Hermie and I. It is now, or myself, but some of that we can stagger a little bit. Again, Andrea helps with payment evaluation and payment maintenance. A lot of our contracts are for those programs. And so we can kind of tag team a lot of things. Everybody's a backup to each other. It's not just, one person that does everything. So if we're confident in our availability, work time, all of that.
Okay. And I'm assuming maybe this is for a later time, but there's an idea of what to do with that $158,000 savings you're not paying paying out every year annually. Or, I'm not asking for right now, but obviously that's, as opposed to generating revenue, you're now being able to do something with current revenue. And so, yeah, I'm just thinking about the process used to reallocate that?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what that would look like yet. Just, some limitations on what that can be used for,
Right.
of course. And yeah, that's something we're gonna have to look into a little bit further. With Kristen on the finance side and what we can and cannot do with that available funding.
That's good.
And she just raised his hand.
Kenji?
I figured he was gonna want to say something.
Yeah, a quick thing for you, Alex. You might want to explain how many procurements there actually are. So there's a little bit more context around how much workload there is, because it's not as many as folks might think. So that might be good to give a little bit of context there as well. And in terms of the $158,000, Kristen can give you a better idea in terms of that amount. So.
I was just looking at that and figuring we could ask her during her presentation.
And yeah, with the amount of procurements, I mean, of course, it fluctuates throughout the year depending on timing of, construction schedules and all of that. Some things are dependent on an FAA and DOT, other external entities. At any given time, it's, 10 to 20 procurements or contracts that we're administering. So it's not a large amount. And it's one of those that, again, once we're able to really streamline internal practices and procedures and whatnot, the day-to-day maintenance is fairly straightforward and it's something we can maintain. The early days of the transition are always a little bit rough, the growing pains and whatnot, but that's something we'll pass.
I mean, that could even fund a staff position to be able to, again, something for you all to work on later, but that can certainly 158,000 fund a staff position to handle a lot of that administrative work to continue to allow you to do even more. And so, yeah, just food for thought, I guess.
Appreciate it. Questions?
Any additional questions for Alex?
Nice job.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, it wasn't exciting news.
Yeah.
I was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
I did. I liked paper airplane graphic though. That was, you added a little snazz to it. Okay, well, we will move on to the ASAP rulemaking update and Andrea.
This will be really quick. As Alex already touched on in his presentation, we started working with DOJ a little more than 6 months ago to revise and amend our Oregon Administrative Rules 738-124 for the Aviation System Action Program, which includes the administrative rules for the core and SOAR program. The purpose for updating this, one is that just in this last short legislative session, we had a statutory amendment to our ASAP statutes where we removed the specific ones, Airport Improvement Program, regarding the FAA grants that we provide match for. That just, again, allows a little more flexibility for our grantees that are receiving funds from the FAA and how they can utilize core funds as well. And then we also did additional updates to clarify eligibility requirements and processes for distribution and administration of ASAP funds. We sent out the track changes. Oh, this.
I just remember, sorry, and do you want comments or questions now, or?
Yeah, that's fine.
There was some concerns, I think, from some in the industry about the removal of that language, and you all said you were going to work with it. And I don't remember the follow-up from that.
Yeah.
From some of the airlines perhaps as well.
Yeah, that wasn't our rules. That was ORS. Can't remember the exact statute at the moment, but that was a statute issue. So let's see if I can recall that. So that was, we removed, we had the discussion with, I'm sorry, I can't recall the name at the moment. Yeah, Airlines for America. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had that discussion with them. Unfortunately, when that was brought to our attention, it was kind of last minute.
Right.
So we just were able to come to a kind of a agreement and just process it or with
the language as it
is.
Okay.
With the intent to get back with them over this summer and fall. if we want to,
If there's any other things that they.
yeah, we want
Yeah, I think it was your concern about the intent behind the language as well and how it be. Okay,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
remember those comments coming in and just wanted to make sure that they had been addressed.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll follow up again with A4A to basically review again if we'd like to request another amendment or not in next sessions.
So just to go through the timeline really quickly again, we submitted our notice of proposed rulemaking to the Secretary of State just about a month ago on May 6th. It was officially published in the SOS Bulletin just this past Monday on June 3rd. The public comment period, we have had it open since May 6th and it closes June 21st, which coincides with Secretary of State ending their public comment periods. We'll be holding our public hearing on June 19th. And then our intent is to publish our permanent rules next month in July. Public comments can be submitted to email address. It's grants@odav.oregon.gov. Any questions about the updates in the rules can also be submitted at that email address. The link to the policies, as well as the track changes for the rules, are on our website on the front page. And then we've also sent out notification emails to our airport managers, consultants, the board, and other interested parties and stakeholders. And then again, Alex, myself, and Ernie are the contacts for this rulemaking update. So either the grants email, or you can also reach out to one of us with any questions.
Do you have a rulemaking subcommittee for this?
We decided not to do one. We felt that the public hearing and the public comments were sufficient because the updates that we made were pretty much purely administrative. There wasn't anything that actually changed the intent of the program or how the funds are used. So we felt like we didn't necessarily need the rulemaking committee.
Benji has his hand up. Benji, go ahead.
Yep. So Steve, the concern from A4A was that core funds would be used for non-airport related projects and in essence, like non-AIP eligible projects in essence. And that was their biggest concern about the statutory change. But I think, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, the way that the core program runs, it has to be airport related anyways, because of restrictions. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Someone. Okay, great. Yeah, so that, I understand the concern of A4A around that, but it's inherent in the program that it has to.
Right, I just wanted,
Yes.
we talked about it. I just wanted to make sure that there was a follow-up that occurred in the conversation so that it's not left hanging out there.
Great. Okay, any other questions on that topic? Great, and we will keep moving with the state airports manager, Tony.
Share my screen. I'm doing that. This week has been a very busy week traveling to South and East Oregon to some of our most remote rural airstrips. And I look forward to sharing photos and more about that trip in our next board meeting. Okay, so summer is upon us. And on May 1st, our 4 seasonal airports that are closed seasonally, they reopened. So that's the Crescent Lake State Airport, McKenzie Bridge, San Diego Junction, and Togati. So now all the airports are fully opened and
That's cool. So was
yeah,
that snow to the press runway?
we'll have a little paper airplane transit. So yes,
Just a chainsaw.
we happen to have the same photo from 2 different seasons. Wow. So with the summer, we are in full swing for mowing, and all of the airports, technically except one, have had one complete mow. Pacific City was supposed to be done, but Rain last week has kind of set us behind. So that airport's going to be mowed next week, just before we have a work party. I'm going to talk about that here in another minute. But full swing in mowing. And then because mowing is going so well, we are already looking at planning for painting. And last year was our first year with the new schedule rotation that our airports are on for painting. We had, I think, 7 airports done. So now we're going to do these 6 this summer, including Aurora, which is primarily being painted with a project that we have coming up. But we are also going to paint the runway, which is separate from the project, and then Chiloquin, Crescent Lake, Independence, Oak Ridge, and Pinehurst. So we'll be sharing more information, updates through GovDelivery on the closure notices and issuing notams for these paintings. And then we also have a lot of great events coming up this summer. So I'm not going to read quite through all of these, but at Cottage Grove, Joseph, Aurora, and Independence, a lot of great fly-ins, stole competition, and there's a memorial fly-in. So add these to your calendars, check them out. I'm going to try to attend as many as I can. And they're always great events. Want to give a shout out to volunteer service. So the Friends of Pacific City State Airport are doing a party that's next week, the 15th of June. And so we're going to try to help them out and get a full mow at the airport. And the airport will be closed. We're going to have notams issued, and they go do a lot of work just cleaning up vegetation, cleaning out drainage, and just cleaning up the airport after all of the seasonal flooding that it experiences throughout the winter. And then the folks out at Joseph are looking at making a lot of improvements and doing maintenance to landscaping, putting gravel in the parking lot, and adding or improving airport signage and the pilot lounge building, which we really appreciate. And then finally on the volunteer program update, this was something that we had been discussing since last fall. And this is something that staff and I have been working on kind of behind the scenes, and we're looking forward to bringing outreach and including a lot of the folks at our airports into sharing what that program is going to look like, getting their input so we can finalize it based on their input and hopefully implement that across the state and scale to all of our airports. So looking forward to bringing that later this summer. More information will be sent through GovDelivery. And I have more information on how people can check for that, Peter. Project updates. The Aurora State Airport, so for obstruction removal, the Aurora State Airport, the EA for the obstruction removal project has continued to go back and forth with the FAA. We just, through the latest iteration of review and revisions to the FAA's comments, have sent that back to the FAA just last week. So still taking some time and really hoping that this was a final review and we can move this forward so we can begin appraisals and work on easement acquisition. The Milano State Airport, we are contracting for appraisals and easements for the properties that we don't already have easements. The properties that we do have easements for had construction occur in March, and that has been completed for the 5 properties that we already had easements, and I have a couple photos to share on that here in just a minute. And then Chiloquin, similar to Milano, we're still contracting for appraisals and easements. This is the south end of the Milano Airport, and sorry, I'm not anticipating the delay here. And this photo just shows the kind of the scale of the project that we already had. So across the river to the south, and including a little bit of the property on the north side of the river, just near the runway. And this is 5 different properties, and including a portion of our land where we have a tenant that has an agricultural lease. And so they really did clear quite a large area of trees. And this next photo, this is after that has been completed, but this just shows there's still quite more work to do. So this is the remaining portion of the project where we're looking to acquire easements and clear all of the obstructions.
Sorry, Tony, on that previous slide.
Yeah.
Those lands that are along the, I guess it'd be the same side of the riverbank, but the ones further south that it curves around, there's all those properties that, and I think those are those tallest trees that you see in the next one. Is that the second phase? Because those are all a whole bunch of single property owners that all have that riverfront.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if they complete those, will they be able to restore the threshold back to the end of the runway location, or will it permanently be relocated to where it is now? Is that the goal to restore it, or is it going to continue to permanently be in this?
I think the threshold is in its ultimate configuration or location. I don't know that we're going to relocate that, right? And I think that's for safety area requirements.
Oh, okay.
With the
river.
For the river,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Yep.
So it's not technically a displaced threshold.
It's a relocated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's for, I'd have to confirm, but I think that's for a safety area. And then back in 2018, 2019, we did have to turn the happy off because the trees were within the approach path. So that's definitely something that we're looking to get restored as soon as these trees are down.
I have a question before Kenji.
Sure.
Did Dawn take that photo from the?
Don did take that photo with the drone. Yes.
That's exactly what I was going to say. For the record, I did not take that drone photo. And I also want to mention Don Rich Creek has been knocking it out of the park with his drone usage, not only taking photos, but also using the laser rangefinder to figure out slopes. So that's increases his efficiency greatly. So I just want to pass that along to the board.
Definitely. Our staff do, I've mentioned this before, they do all the 5010, the master record updates for all public use airports in Oregon. And we have a new tool, a new drone that Kenji helped us acquire that has an upgraded laser rangefinder. And it's been a great tool for staff getting out there, checking obstructions, getting better, more accurate data, and a better perspective, as you can see in this photo. So, very helpful. And then I also operated the drone out at Hawaii yesterday, and again, I'll share more information on that in a couple months. Okay, other projects. We have our surface seal and markings project at Aurora. This is for everything on ODAP property except for the runway. And that project is starting July 8th. We're anticipating 12 construction days from July 8th through the 19th. And there's 5 days of runway closure. And I have just a little more information on the project here in a minute. Next week, we have 2 master plan meetings. We have the PAC meeting where we're going to go over the preliminary alternatives. After in our last meeting, we covered facility requirements. And then on Thursday, the 13th, we have a open house at the North Marion High School. And you can find more information if you don't have it on our project website, which is linked here below. Was there a question? Our Cape Blanco runway rehab and our Prospect runway reconstruction project, these have been bid and awarded. We're just scheduling with the contractor and looking forward to getting those projects breaking ground here very soon.
Construction costs come in for that, the big costs.
They came in within our within the funds fail. So
Okay.
yeah,
That's refreshing.
yeah. They've been old. So not able to do all the electrical improvements that we wanted to do, but we're also trying to work with them on how much money is left over. Do we have enough to do some of the electrical improvements? Yeah. On that surface seal project at Aurora, we divided the full project into 4 work areas, and we did that to minimize the duration of the runway closure, which is down to 5 days. And the non-runway portion or the non-runway affecting portion of the project will be done through a series of 12 and 2-day closures or full-day closures. And so we're going to share all the information through Gov Delivery on as we get closer to the start date of the project and the scheduling for each of those phases. And then we're also, of course, going to have all of the conditions and closures set up in NOTAMs as well. So I've mentioned Gov Delivery a few times. Just a reminder that you can find this link on our homepage at oregon.gov/aviation. Click that, add in your email, and there's a whole bunch of different topics you can select to subscribe to. And be sure to select your favorite or all of the state-owned airports, each of those topics. And then there's also separate topics for the board, for different programs for the department. And there is a specific topic for the Aurora State Master Plan project as well. And then there's another way that you can sign up if you were forwarded, if somebody sent you or you came across a previous notice that we've sent out, there's at the very bottom, you can just find the link Manage Subscriptions. You can click that and add in your email and subscribe that way as well. So upcoming closures, in addition to the projects I mentioned earlier, again, the Friends of Pacific City State Airport are working and they have a work party. So they're closing the airport on the 15th, anticipating 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. that day. So it will be an estimated NOTAM and will reopen when they're complete. And then looking at, again, scheduling Cape Blanco Prospect and then Siletz Bay runways. And I mentioned the surface fill project. And then we did hold 2 open house meetings for the upcoming Aurora runway rehabilitation that we're anticipating for the summer of 2025. And we're still coordinating with the FAA on the feedback we got from the public about the duration of that project. We did have one recent VPD at Aurora since the last board meeting on April 24th. This was an individual who had walked with 2 dogs out on the non-movement side of the movement line for quite a distance until finally just stepping over the line for a brief minute. And anyway, still continuing to work with airport tenants and then through the fence groups on communicating and trying to avoid VPDs at Aurora. We are very close to sending out a draft version of our driver's training that we helped develop with input from the Port of Portland and from the Hillsborough Airport. Really appreciate that assistance. And what we'll be looking to do is get airport feedback and incorporate their input on the private property side and any other input they might have so that we can implement this. And it's going to be non-movement specific. The movement area portion will be restricted to those ODAP authorized. But the non-movement side, we are really happy to get that information out very soon and look forward to outreach with our airport groups. And then just a reminder that when we do implement driver's training, I'll bring more information on the rule that we had been working on since 2022 and bringing that back to the board as a refresher and for approval. And we'll be working with the airport groups on that as well. Any questions?
Any questions, Kenji?
Thanks for your continued work on that incursion issue.
Yeah.
And I know it must be frustrating when you still have people that are violating that, but we've seen significant improvement. So the work you've been doing has been good.
Yeah, thank you. It's an unending battle. Outreach and education is always going to be important. Safety is, of course, our top priority, and really want to give a shout out, as I've done before, but shout out to the airport groups out there who are making a big effort on that as well.
Just an observation for Kenji, for Tony, for Alex, for the entire team. It's just been really refreshing to see over the last year, especially as you talk about like bringing things in and having the bandwidth and time to do it, or Tony just sharing your pictures and Kenji saying, yeah, I wasn't being like the fact of staff really stepping up and actually having the tools now to do a lot of these things and to do it most efficiently to give you that time and resources to do other things, to have a drone to be able to take photos like this, or to have a rangefinder to be able to find out the distance to a tree, and all the things that previously you had to contract with someone to come out and do survey work or do all that. And to have this, to see now an improvement, to see that staff has the tools, the time, and the training to do a lot of these and to be able to be the most efficient. It's really refreshing to see a change, even just in the last 12 months. So I totally appreciate it. And thank you, Kenji, for your leadership and for everyone on the team for that as well.
Thank you.
Ditto. All right, thank you, Tony. Appreciate that. And we will move on to the finance manager update and Kristen.
Okay, thank you. And I will share my screen. I'm going to apologize. I have a lot of background noise here. My neighbor decided to start pressure washing just before my presentation, of course. So sorry about that. Hold on just a moment while I share my screen here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I am going to do a staffing update for you, and then I'm going to give you a brief snapshot of our finances in the current biennium. And I'm going to show you the operations program, the aircraft registration, and the pavement maintenance program. Okay, and so we've already talked about it in this meeting. So we all know that Holly is leaving us. And so I will just mirror what Kenji says. We're going to really miss Holly, and we appreciate all the work she's done for us. And so that being said, of course, we have a position open, a marketing and administrative specialist. And so it's open now until July 11th. So we're hoping to start interviews at the beginning of, June 11th. We're hoping to start interviews at the beginning of July and get someone in the position the middle of July. So at the next board meeting in August, you will probably see a new face in that position. So now I wanted to give you a snapshot of the operations department. So this is in the current biennium. So right now our fiscal year, it ends the end of June. So we are in the first year of the biennium. So we're almost halfway through our current budget. So it's a good time to take a look at how our budget is looking. So operations, it is most of our personnel comes out of this budget, and also our airport maintenance and our just airport maintenance, I guess, and personnel. So you can see right here the operation expenses, about 63 of it is personal services, and the other 37 is service and supplies. And I know we just had a question during Alex's presentation about the $158,000. And so that comes out of this budget. So I get really excited when we have a reduction of expenditures, because what that's going to do is it's going to help offset some of the increases of expenditures that we have. So for example, the union negotiations, the most recent ones, we had a 6.5% salary increase for all of our employees in December of 2023. And then in January of 2025, we're going to have a 6.5% increase. And so the challenge with that in a small agency is that doesn't come with revenue. And so for us, that's about 200,000 additional expenditures for operations. So what that means for us is we usually have to make cuts in some of our other service and supplies categories, such as airport maintenance costs for equipment and some travel costs. So that will actually help us to not make as many cuts as we were going to have to make. So that is a good thing. Here this shows the breakdown of revenue. So about 64% of that revenue is coming from fuel tax, and 95% of that is jet fuel. 15% is rents and royalties, so land leases at airports generally, and 12% is some other fees at airports. And I also wanted to show you a little more detail of the profit and loss for the airports. So this shows all of our 28 airports. So this is starting with July of 2023 through the end of May. So this is the revenues and expenditures for each of our airports. So as you can imagine, most of the smaller airports are in the red. And you can see here that our four airports that have the most profit, the first one is Independence. So it's about 109,000. The second one is Malino, right here with 58,000 profit so far. And then the third one might be not what you think, but it's actually Oak Ridge. So Oak Ridge is profitable because of the USDA payments for airport use for firefighting. And then our fourth most profitable is Aurora. So Aurora, you might think would be more profitable. It does have the most revenue, but it also has the most expenditure. So that one comes in at number 4. Then I wanted to give you a snapshot of our aircraft registration program. So this is a little more detailed than I usually show you. And I got this from Jerry. She was able to, from our aircraft registration database, pull out the number of active registrations in each category. And so this is how much we receive annually for active aircraft registrations, about 340,000. And so I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of that. So you can see about 14,000 of that is from public use drones, and the rest is from aircraft. And then our aircraft registration expenses, 13% of it goes for the program costs. So that's most of it is for the salary of our aircraft registration specialist. And then about 87% goes for airport maintenance and grant match. And then this is the pavement maintenance program. So the pavement maintenance program is funded by jet fuel tax. And we did have to reduce our expenditures last biennium because we were still recovering from COVID pandemic. But the current biennium, we were able to increase our expenditures back up to what they normally are. So it's typically about $2 million per biennium. And in aircraft registration, we have a nice healthy ending balance of about 1.3 million forecasted for the end of this biennium. So that is a snapshot of our programs right now. And then we're working behind the scenes on our next budget. And so we'll talk more about that at our next board meeting.
Great, thank you, Chris. Could you go back to the slide showing the airports that are in the red?
Yes, right here.
Yeah, we're not seeing your presentation. I think you have to share it again.
Oh, okay.
Now we see us. There we go.
See it now? Okay.
So I'm just looking at this, other than, I'm curious about Joseph State and why there's such a big deficit there. That's my first question.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Tony, did you want to answer that one?
If you want to take a stab at it, but I can also try to answer that if you want, Kristen.
Yeah, one of the our expenditures there are so high because we do have an employee at Joseph State Airport that we are paying for out there. And then Tony, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, that's mostly it. It's the only airport that we have a part-time employee dedicated to just that airport. And so that's paid for out of the SOAR portion of the SOAR fund to the worker fund that we renew every biennium. And it's a small airport with 10 hangars, and maybe the fuel revenue produces about 8,000 in profit a year. So it doesn't offset the operating costs for that airport.
And then the other ones, the red, it seems like a fairly small number. the deficit. Has there been any consideration to how those gaps might be closed?
We're looking at rate increases. So our lease rates, Kevin, our leasing and contract specialist has been working every month adjusting our lease rates that haven't been adjusted in some cases over 12 years. So that's kind of the main way that we're looking at that. That is a CPI adjustment. That's not a rate increase necessarily. It's catching up just with CPI. So we're also looking at starting a rate evaluation for all the airports as well. That's going to be some time before we can really dig into that. Just contracting and appraising 28 airports is going to be a big lift.
Okay. Are there fuel flowage fees at each of those airports as well?
We have every airport that has fuel flowage, or the two that we operate directly is Joseph and Cottage Grove. So we just take all the profit.
And are you looking at the fuel flowage fees as well then?
We would, yeah. Yeah.
That was going to be, my question was about when was the last time rates and that was done? So that's, yes, highly encourage that both for CPI as well as appraisal. But you're right, for 28 airports, that's going to take some time. My other question for Kristen, and I'm assuming I think I already know the answer, but you were mentioning for Aurora, yes, big revenues, but also big expenses. Is that tower expenses? Contract tower expenses?
That's a big part of it. And sorry, Chris, I'm not trying to take over, but that it's a big part of it. All the building maintenance is on us.
Okay. But for state-owned buildings, for ones that have reverted back to your ownership, or when you say
for the tower specifically,
right?
Yeah,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious though, the employee in Joseph, are there other airports that could be supported through that employee region?
That the reason we have that employee is because the airport is just so remote and it takes hours to get there. Even from here, from Pendleton, it's still a couple hours away. Our nearest state airport is Condon, and then Hawaii. And that would it would include a lot of travel, and I just don't know logistically that we could look at it.
Curious, yeah.
Sure.
Any other?
For me in business side, I need a column that has a run rate, but I don't have an idea. So like if this expenditures was also had a column that said like per operation, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking per operation. So like if we could see how Aurora is per operation versus Joseph per operation, right? Then we could have a better comparison. Because I'm not really sure just how much business is going on. And a lot of these things I know how much business is going on, right? So I'm kind of trying to find a run rate metric to add a fourth column.
Yeah.
The only one I can suggest, but people help me out here, is operation as a normalization column.
It might need to be a few more added columns, just a picture. So it might need to be, number of ODAV owned hangars, right?
But you can, anything like, there has to be something that normalizes this so you compare. Or it doesn't.
Flowage column.
Hard to make sense of how to compare the lines.
Or
So like at the top, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Sorry. Following your train of thought, you said it's either a cost or profit per operation.
Per operation is where my mind goes, but I'm also asking for other ideas that might be a better metric to normalize these metrics in this table. Maybe it's per capita in government. Everything is per capita.
I think it's like not going to be one thing.
It's not just right.
Yeah.
So it might be multiple things.
Yeah, no metric is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
But it's just something to kind of have a ratio that tells you this is how each one compares.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Kenji has.
Oh, I was just saying, I agree. I think the more information certainly is obviously better. The only caveat I would say is sometimes like when you boil it down, and we're very familiar with this, but like when you boil it down to one or you try and chase one, like for commercial airports, it's cost per plane passenger. And sometimes it's a good just general metric, but sometimes if you end up trying to chase that one thing, especially like if your passenger volumes fall off, your costs have to stay the same. And so you're like, you look really expensive, but that I think the interesting thing for me is a little more granular detail on some of the things like revenues, like on Aurora, how much of that comes from flowage, how much comes from landing fees, and like where, if you move certain levers, where might you have the opportunity to have better things like revenues or on expenses? Again, like on the expense side, how much of it is material versus Joseph is kind of skewed because you have personnel expenses there. So maybe it's just also.
But that's in the budget. And to my mind, that's in the budget.
It's in the budget.
When we're looking at the budget to approve the budget, then we see each airport. Trying to figure out how to optimize that. But when we're comparing airport A to airport B, and my example that it just popped in my head is being a former mayor, I can see how many police hires are in Portland versus Aurora, which is one, right? So that's a meaningless number until I do it per capita. Then I can see how many police per thousand were sitting there. And it's not an accurate number, but it just gives you an indication of how it is, because you have to take into account crime in Portland is much higher than Aurora, who hasn't had a murder in over 120 years, right? But you still get a feel for how it goes.
And if I can just jump in, Kristen, please correct me if I'm wrong. The revenues and expenditures, the revenues are generated directly at these airports, but the expenditures are just the maintenance and maybe not necessarily all of the personnel time that gets dedicated to these airports. My time is not coded to each airport every hour that I spend on them. And a lot of our other maintenance and operation staff time is not necessarily coded that way either. Not to mention Kristen, Kenji, and everyone else. But also I don't know that it includes, and maybe Kristen can speak more to this, but the MAC requirements for funding or other projects, or even SOAR funding that goes toward maintenance. So looking at kind of the bigger picture, the airports may not be as profitable because the operating revenues are not necessarily offsetting those expenses.
Well, as we all know, or we should know, the FAA wants every airport to be as self-sustaining as possible.
Right.
So I think if you can eliminate the red on that chart, we'll buy you all a steak dinner.
Less than $50.
Yeah, $50.
But
It won't be very good steak. It'll be like mediocre steak.
One quick example, just the Oak Ridge Airport has two hangars that generate I ballpark under $1,000 a year. Right. The Forest Service use does generate in the tens of thousands of dollars each year, but we're looking at over a $6 million project. The local revenue won't necessarily cover. So just context.
Yeah, very good. Okay, any other questions for Kristen? Okay, well, so then that brings us up to lunch, but I would propose that we keep going.
Sure.
Finish up the remainder of the agenda so that folks who need to get on the road and we'll do the tour, of course, which I understand that time. That's good. And then we can all get on the road or on our private plane if we need to. Okay.
Could we take just like a 5-minute break?
Yes, let's take a 5-minute break. Yeah, or how about if we come back? Do you want to come back at 12:10? And then we'll shoot for lunch at 12:30. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Should we read it up? Jump out here. That's on the resume.
See what the insurance is about. I'll find this meeting.
Sorry. I've been holding that in all morning.
Yeah. I'm going to that. I seen the hospital things, everything at 11.
Oh, the PDS, yes, yes. You got an invitation, or you're, oh, awesome.
I think.
Yeah. So you,
Okay, it is 12:10 and we're back. We're just waiting for everybody to get settled back in.
Second, okay.
Back on.
Are you ready to get started again? Ready? Okay, welcome back. So now we're going to just blow through the rest of our agenda so that we can get on to lunch and to our tour of the Pendleton Airport and back on the road if we need to be back on the road or in the air. So this is the time for board updates, for board members to share news, events, related information. So does anybody?
I have a more of a kind of procedural question for us as a board members. And this is probably really a good spot to do it on the agenda. Frequently at our meetings like this, we have public comments, either from residents, hangar owners, or property owners regarding issues at their airports. So we've had a few in the last few meetings. How do we what's the right way for us to address updates to concerns or questions or requests from airports that we've been to? And then how does the board, what's your preference as a staff to kind of fill us back in? So here's what's happened after our last meeting. That would be really helpful. And I think what really struck me is that when we see the airports and their productivity and their financial position, I can't help but think about the problems that related to us as a board of things that they would hope us to address. So that's what kind of grabbed my attention today. And I don't have a strong feeling about how we do this. I just would like to know what's the best way from the staff's perspective, to give us those updates of requests, whether they're in process or we're not able to do it or whatever the reason. Particularly we have some, potentially airport folks that are this meeting. If I were in their sheets, I would be wondering, whatever happened to those requests that we brought to them?
Well, I know some of those answers come in the airport's report as updates. But I don't know that it's always called that specifically as here's something directly related to a public comment that we have. And so, yeah, from staff, I would be interested in how you think the best functionality around that is. Some of it gets answered, like I said, in the airport report.
Yeah.
I don't even have to answer my question today. It's just kind of throwing out the issues in the future. Kind of like, so whatever happened to whatever the issue is?
Yeah, so I do try to include responses to concerns or issues and other questions in my airport update. A lot of the direction that we're going with airports, the volunteer program update, and then even the projects that we're prioritizing with SOAR are based on the input that we get from airport users, the communities, and from the board. So that I hope that I've made clear in the past, but for trying to think how there was a comment that you said earlier, and I'm trying to remember, but I think we have I'm sorry, let me collect my thoughts here. Just like we have our rates that have not been updated for quite some time. So have our policies and our rules in OAR. And that, I think, is a great opportunity for the board to get involved in some of the things, especially with regard to leasing, which I think is a big source for a lot of the issues and concerns that we have. Those have not been updated in probably over 20 years, I think, since the early 2000s. So that's a great opportunity, something that I really look forward to bringing to our airport users through, again, more public outreach and getting their input as well as to the board. And so that's a direct way that I think the board can be involved there. Does that help answer your question a little bit?
A little bit. But I didn't want to get to the specifics of the issues that have been brought to the board. I don't think that part's appropriate because it's just, it goes back to the staff, and then the staff takes care of those responsibilities. I mostly want to know things like, one airport expressed concerns about there was too much garbage running around the airport. What's the new plan? And I'm just making this one up. So what's the plan to, address that issue? And, the users of the airport are concerned, and they don't have the facilities that they need in order to operate as smoothly as what they would like to do. So it's kind of those specific requests that people bring to us. And sometimes there's an air of frustration about those requests. And those are the ones that kind of tickle, my curiosity is, how are we responding to those?
Right.
I think in general, we also need to keep in mind that if it's something that's operational, that gets handed to staff and they deal with the operational side of the house, and we are really the policy setting body. And so, it's fine to give an update, if it's relevant, but I think we as a board, we need to keep in mind that our role is policy setting and their role is operation.
And I mostly want to, to thank, the staff for listening to the problems and then responding and telling us as board members, here was the problem that brought up to a specific board meeting that we had, and here's how we've taken care of it. And I just want to do a great job. So.
Catherine, okay if I chime in here?
Yes. Yeah, please do.
Okay. So I think if it's an operational question, right, and they bring it up, I think the most appropriate way to do it is if a board member is curious about how the resolution worked out, ask us, right? I don't think it's a good idea to ask it in an open board meeting, because it seems to give an impression that going to the board will solve an operational problem, and that's not what we want to do. So if you have a question, definitely just ask us. Most of the time, we do resolve it with the individual involved, or in some instances, we can't. The request is we can't do it just because of either legal or issues or whatever. So feel free to reach out to staff. I mean, we're always open to all board members chatting with us, because we love chatting with you, and you are a great board. So I think that's the ultimate resolution, really, is to ask. And follow up we need to do, we do it just because we do, because if an issue is identified, we do think something should be done. It's just a matter of just how to frame it and how to make sure that when we address it, we just want to make sure that it's more of a one-on-one conversation. So if that makes sense.
Right. Thank you, Kenji. I appreciate it.
Any other
no problem.
items for board updates? I have a couple. So the Eugene Airport, we're actually going to host a couple of groups coming into Eugene and our airport, and I'm just flagging it for the group just for fun. So I currently sit on the Airport Cooperative Research Program Oversight Committee, and we meet a couple or 3 times a year. We select which ACRP projects are being funded. So it's work that I really enjoy, and work that's useful out in the industry. And hopefully a lot of folks are already aware of ACRP and what a great resource that is for airports of all sizes. So I'm hosting the the ACRP Oversight Committee in Eugene for one of our biannual meetings, and the week of July 15th. So I'm pretty excited to have that group come out. We've started to move our, we kind of trade off. We'll meet in DC once a year, and then we'll go to one of the other members' airports or communities. And so excited to have that group come in. And then also a reminder that the OAMA Fall Conference this coming September 29th through October 1st will also be held in Eugene. So hopefully we'll be seeing a lot of people at that one as well. Okay. Additional?
I think it's well known that PDX, we will be opening the phase one of the new terminal for public operation, August 14th. What is not as well known, and I'm certainly can share this with board members, I don't have the right now in a detailed email, but as part of that, we will be doing both intermediate and advanced trials of the systems. So basically taking a small group, several hundred people to act as passengers that go through it during July. And then right prior to opening, we will do a more advanced trial with up to like 2,000 or 2,500. We will be asking for volunteers in the community to do that. So if you have just an interest of playing you'll be given a script and like you are a traveler X with suitcase Y, or you have a disability and you need assistance. And that if you'd like to participate, I'll send the details out to all board members and staff as well. It'll be just sign up as you go. So it'll be an open call in the community. But if you want to come to Portland, that's on that date to be a tester to see if you have a free afternoon or whatever. And so, yeah, feel free to come and try that. You also get it just a couple weeks in advance. You'll get a sneak peek behind the scenes, and you'll get a free TSA screening as part of the entire process.
That comes complete with pat down.
I will forward that. Yeah, okay. I can forward that.
Don't get helpful.
Yeah. So as that information in the actual gate and the sign up gets published, I'll forward that to Holly, and you can send that out to everybody as well.
Great.
But yeah, that'll be the advanced trial.
Very good. Okay. Then we'll move on to other business. This is time provided for the board staff to bring up topics, board or staff to bring up topics not currently on the agenda. Anybody have anything they want to bring forward? Okay. And then agenda input. So do we need to provide any summary of board direction to staff? I think we just had that conversation. And then any topics for the future board meetings that anyone would like to bring up?
Well, just as agenda update or discussion as well as future. I know that the next month is, we were just talking about this during the break. Next month is obviously a work session, so it's mostly online. But because it does have the participation for grants review and that, I just wondered if there was any value in actually perhaps being more in person to kind of share and as opposed to trying to share information on screen and have conversations back and forth on screen. I'm certainly willing to come to Salem for that afternoon and participate.
It's the day for July 4th.
It's July 11th. It's the next week. Yeah. So I'm certainly willing to come if in person, if we did if everybody wants to be there, or some people want to do a hybrid, I'm certainly willing to come in, and it's a Thursday, so it's not a big deal. Be there in person. I just don't know if there's any extra value to, especially if we're having conversations about applications and those types of things, if it's easier to do that like this in person.
I'd be happy to go.
I think that would be something to do again in Salem.
I'm good for doing
It'd be
it,
much easier to discuss those different projects.
as opposed to
Yeah.
raising your hand on screen and then sharing and then waiting till somebody
Right.
else shares on screen.
Because for July 11th, I may be remoting in though.
Oh,
Because I am planning on, I guess, still being on as a part-time temp for the agency. And I went over that with Alex, so it's up to Alex really, if you do want to remote 100%, or do you want to be there? And
Because people are still the Connect Oregon applicants they can still call in
Right.
virtually, right, and do their presentation. So we can still definitely do hybrid, and if somebody's not able to make in person, virtual is fine.
okay, I'll be online just moderating then and then, okay.
for our discussion, it just seems to be easier
Yeah.
type of thing. But again, it's just a proposal. You is certainly go with whatever the agency can support.
How long?
Kenji, do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah. just having in person is a great idea. There's much more dynamic flow to any conversations that happen. So I think it's a great idea.
Thanks, well, so I guess we'll just say for those who can make it in person in Salem, I will, I'd be hybrid, but if we can make it in person as a board, then that would be great. And if, there's some of our members that are a little more remote than others, so, that we'll have that online option as well if we need to. Very good. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, any other agenda input? Any other, I think we've already provided some ideas about other metrics we might want to take a look at and financials.
Yeah, that would be worth an extended conversation.
Yeah, I think so.
I agree.
Maybe a work session on that.
Yeah.
What was that?
Normalization metrics. I think I was talking about.
Financial information.
And then just because the timing totally is on our way out, I think the next in-person meeting in August is K Falls, right?
Yes.
So we're still leaving K Falls. And then we
That's
can
fine. But I think that works for.
checking with Holly then on how to best prepare for that and set transition. So, okay.
Get you right on your perfect.
Yeah. Hey, it's-
If they only flew to K Falls, I'd
maybe
get
we
on.
can do a charter. Pick me up on the way.
So who's cover this topic?
The finance stuff.
Oh, it's financial topic, just Kristen?
Yeah, we can check in with Chris on it. Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other agenda input. Checking. All right, then we will adjourn for lunch.
That's during the meeting.
We're adjourning the meeting. Yes, correct. We're adjourning the meeting. So thanks for everybody for joining today. We'll eat lunch and then we'll go take a tour of Pendleton Airport.
Thank you. Recording has ended.
Awesome.